The old man stood between two towering officers, wrists bound in cold steel, his posture sunken from years of battle both abroad and within. His military jacket clinging to a frail frame that once carried entire squads on his back. Metals clinking softly with every shuffled step as if whispering stories no one had bothered to ask. And the courtroom fell into a heavy silence, not out of respect. But confusion whispers darted through the room like sparks in dry grass. Is he serious with that outfit? Is that real? Why would a homeless man wear medals? But the man, eyes sunken, skin weathered like old leather, said nothing. Not when the prosecutor scoffed at his appearance, or when the officers gripped his arms tighter, as if afraid he might explode despite the way his hands trembled from cold or trauma, or both. And when the bailiff read the charges: trespassing, attempted theft, assault on an officer, it was like nails being driven into a coffin of dignity, already buried years ago by a world that had decided old soldiers were relics. Not heroes, not people, just problems to be removed. And as the charges echoed off the high marble walls, the man lifted his head ever so slightly, revealing eyes that had once stared down death, but now just looked. Tired, and somewhere in the back of the courtroom, a janitor, old, hunched, with a mop leaning against the wall, squinted through his thick glasses, eyes going wide as he dropped the bucket with a crash that no one noticed except the judge, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing as he opened the file before him, flipping lazily through the standard intake forms until he reached the name. And then his hand stopped, froze mid-turn, fingers trembling slightly, pupils dilating, jaw slackening as if he'd seen a ghost, and he leaned forward, glasses slipping down the bridge of his nose, reading the name again, Jack Raymond Carter, a name he hadn't heard in over 40 years. Not since the sandstorms of the Gulf. Not since blood and sand and smoke and a voice over comms that said, "Hold the line. We're getting you out." And when he looked up, the old man was staring back, not confused, not scared, but patient, waiting for recognition like a dog who still believes his master will return home. And then the judge whispered, more to himself than anyone else, "Jack?" And the old man blinked slowly, then gave the barest of nods. And the judge stood abruptly, knocking over his chair, causing the bailiff to reach for his gun, and the prosecutor to flinch, and the gallery to murmur, until the judge roared, voice cracking, "Unkind him. Now." And the officers hesitated, unsure if this was some kind of test or breakdown. But the judge's face was pale, sweating, eyes locked on Jack like a man who'd just remembered a life debt unpaid. And when the cuffs were removed, Jack rubbed his wrists gently, as if savoring the return of something more than just circulation, something like dignity. And the judge sat down heavily, fingers interlaced, voice lower now, gentler, filled with years of regret. "Where have you been, Colonel?" And suddenly the courtroom was no longer a courtroom, but a memory palace filled with gunfire, sand, blood, and courage, and Jack's voice, when it came, was rasped from disuse, but sharp as a blade, looking for peace. And so began a story no one expected, of a boy from Kansas who enlisted at 17, who fought in 3 wars, who led a rescue mission during Desert Storm that saved 27 American POWs, under conditions so impossible it earned him the Medal of Honor, though he never accepted it, said, "I was just doing my job." And while the nation celebrated him, Jack disappeared, vanished like smoke, and for decades he was a rumor, a myth, until the world moved on and forgot him entirely. And the judge, now trembling, said, "You saved my life, Jack. I was pinned under that truck in the ravine. You pulled me out." And Jack nodded. "I remember," and tears welled up in the judge's eyes, not just from gratitude, but from shame. Because before him sat a man who had once been saluted by presidents and now slept in alleyways and ate from garbage cans while the country he bled for forgot he ever existed. And the prosecutor, young, ambitious, still blinded by procedure, objected, saying, "This doesn't change the fact that he broke the law." And Jack, turning to him with a gaze so sharp it sliced through arrogance like butter, said, "Son, the law forgot me long before I forgot it." And for a moment, no one knew what to say until the janitor stepped forward, voice shaking. "He's not a criminal. He saved me too, in Fallujah." And suddenly it was as if the courtroom became sacred ground, because others stood up, two men in suits, a woman in her 50s, a bus driver, a school principal, one by one. Strangers revealing they too owed their lives to Jack Carter, the man who never took credit, who never came home to applause, who just kept walking until his legs gave out and the streets claimed him. And news of the hearing spread like wildfire. Reporters swarming the courthouse, veterans arriving in droves, some on wheelchairs, some walking with canes, some carrying faded photos of their younger selves beside Jack in uniform, all gathering to witness justice that had waited too long. And as the courtroom filled with people, the judge cleared his throat, voice now firm. "All charges are dropped, Colonel Carter, and I owe you more than that." And Jack tried to speak, but emotion choked him, and he collapsed not from weakness, but the weight of it all. And when he awoke in a hospital bed, clean sheets beneath him for the first time in years, for dripping quietly beside him, he saw the judge again, sitting with coffee in hand, red-eyed and silent. And Jack asked, "Why now?" And the judge replied, "Because I finally saw what I should have seen all along." And word of Jack's story exploded across the nation, trending on every platform. Headlines reading, "Forgotten Hero Found in Courtroom," "Veteran Homeless No More," and donations flooded in. Shelters named in his honor, bills proposed in Congress to expand veteran services, all because one man walked into court with his past stitched onto his chest and refused to be erased. And Jack didn't want the fame, didn't want the money. He asked for one thing only: "Don't let this happen again." And so began Carter's Code, a movement to identify and support forgotten veterans, to recognize valor beyond medals, to heal wounds deeper than flesh. And while Jack recovered, his hospital room became a shrine of soul-sold comrades visiting with stories and letters, school children sending drawings, generals saluting, and one day a young soldier limped in, missing a leg, saying, "Because of you, sir, I'm alive." And Jack smiled, tears in his eyes. Then it was worth it, and when he was finally discharged, the city held a parade, not with confetti and floats, but with silence and respect, flags held high, thousands lining the streets, saluting as Jack passed by in a jeep, hand over heart, eyes scanning the crowd for faces long gone. And later that night, sitting quietly in a modest apartment gifted by the community, Jack wrote in a worn notebook, "I was never lost, just waiting to be found." And though his body would eventually fade, the fire he lit did not, as the Carter Foundation grew, helped thousands, inspired millions, and decades later, when he passed away in his sleep, age 97, the nation mourned not just a man, but a truth they had almost forgotten, that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear rags and walk invisible among us until someone, somewhere, remembers their name. And it all began that day in court, when a judge recognized a soldier, a nation recognized a mistake, and the world remembered what honor really looks like.